In this speech, he has 3 principles.
Number 1 in your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth, and your own somebodyness. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that you are nobody. Always feel that you count. Always feel that you have worth. And always feel that your life has ultimate significance. Now that means that you should not be ashamed of your color. You know, it's very unfortunate that in so many instances our society has placed a stigma on the Negro's color. And you know, there are some Negroes who are ashamed of themselves. But don't be ashamed of your color. Don't be ashamed of your biological features.
So the first principle, he says, is in your blueprint, you should have a deep belief in your own dignity, in your own worth, and in your own somebodyness. And in the context of his speech, again, he's talking to a predominantly African American audience. And they are high school students. So how did this principle play out in his own being and how he showed up? This image here is from a demonstration that happened the day before Martin Luther King was assassinated. And in this demonstration, he was invited to come and present and speak to over 5,000 different sanitation workers who were doing a demonstration. And something I find very fascinating in this image is the slogan that folks are holding up. And that slogan, it says, "I am a man." And when these folks decided to go out for this demonstration, they wore their Sunday's best. They wore the outfit that they felt best represented who they were. So the notion of somebodyness is a very critical part when we think about our own personal being and how we see ourselves. And in this setting, the folks that you're seeing in this image, they were persecuted, they were treated unfairly, their wages were much, much lower than what they deserved. And they went out in the street in order to demonstrate. And Martin Luther King Jr. was invited to participate in this demonstration. And this was a day before he was assassinated. Here's an image of Martin Luther King during that demonstration. Here's another image of him speaking that night before. So the notion of somebodyness is so critical. Because when you feel that your identity is worth, that you have self-pride and positive self-esteem in how you see yourself, when the tribulation outside starts occurring and happening, you have the opportunity to continue to find stability. And in this case, when we look at where these folks were who were demonstrated, if we look at in comparison to where we are today, some might say, oh, we're in a way, way better position than where they were. But the notion of having that positive self-esteem around how you see yourself is so critical. And that's Martin Luther King's first principle in that speech, having a sense of being, of somebodyness. And that demonstrated over and over and over and over in his work. Do you know 10 years prior to Martin Luther King's assassination, there was an attempt assassination on him? He was out promoting a book that he wrote, and somebody stabbed him right near his heart. A lot of the things that he encountered, for most of us, it might have been things where we would have said, all right, that's it. In concept, in an ideal standpoint, those concepts are great. But in terms of action, most of us would have been like, that's a little too much. right? Most of us would have been like, that's a good hashtag. Or that's a good tile on our Instagram. That's a good reshare. He believed in himself and he believed in the cause that he had. And because of that belief, he endured so much challenges and difficulties. And eventually, those challenges and difficulty led to his life being taken away. So the second principle in his speech focuses on hard work. Being able to show mastery. Working hard to compete at the highest level in the areas that you have interest in.
You're going to be deciding as the days and the years unfold what you will do in life, what your life's work will be. And once you discover what it will be, set out to do it and to do it well. And I say to you, my young friends, that doors are opening to each of you. Doors of opportunity are opening to each of you that were not open to your mothers and to your fathers. And the great challenge facing you is to be ready to enter these doors as they open. I would say to you, don't drop out of school, and I understand all of the sociological reasons why we often drop out of school. But I urge you, in spite of your economic plight, in spite of the situation that you are forced to live so often with intolerable conditions, stay in school. And when you discover what you're going to be in life, set out to do it as if God Almighty called you at this particular moment in history to do it.
And then the second principle, he's talking about action and behavior. In order to achieve what he achieved, he needed to actually do the work. But how did that catapult to greater things? And a lot of times when we think about our being and our doing, sometimes we get caught up with our being, which is great. But the doing is the intersections of where you can bring your ideas and your vision to life. Martin Luther King was arrested, I believe, over 29 times. You know the statistic that's really interesting about Martin Luther King? A lot of times, our history of now doesn't really get catapulted until years and years later. So here's an example. Less than 28% of white Americans were supporters of Martin Luther King at the time Martin Luther King was doing his work. Less than 28%. So the odds were against him at every angle. Even through our own government. The FBI tapped into his home, the hotels that he would travel to. So when we talk about Martin Luther King, sometimes we kind of put him in a box a little bit, right? Because it's the way that we think about history. It might be a little bit more. It's almost like it's like historical, but very novelish. So we're like, oh yeah. So our government, the American government, tapped into Martin Luther King everywhere he went, because he was a threat. So just to give you some context, right? So imagine if you were so passionate about something where you wanted to change the world, right? You wanted to change the community around you. And what you believe in was so good, so strong, that you felt noble. But less than 28% of the folks around you supported you. And those who have power around you are using their power to make sure that if they feel like they need to tame you, slow you down, work against you, that they can utilize their power to do so. And that was the reality of Martin Luther King every day, every second, while he was fighting for the rights of people that didn't have it. Now let's move on to the third principle. The eternal principle of beauty, love, and justice.
Finally, in your life's blueprint must be a commitment to the eternal principles of beauty, love, and justice. Don't allow anybody to pull you so low as to make you hate them. Don't allow anybody to cause you to lose your self-respect to the point that you do not struggle for justice. However young you are, you have a responsibility to seek to make your nation a better nation in which to live. You have a responsibility to seek to make life better for everybody. And so you must be involved in the struggle for freedom and justice.
So he says, don't allow anybody cause you to lose your self-respect to a point where you do not struggle for justice. He says the internal principle of beauty, love, and justice. So those are the three principles that I wanted to touch on.